focus on curricula that ensure that students also gain an ability to act on science and technology by taking a role in determining how they are used and for what purposes. So this is very important. There's a book, I forgot the author, Dangerous Science. I think it was an old book. It was I think published after Second World War. But now we are coming back to this dangerous science of misinformation. So if you look at World Economic Forum, these days I actually follow the business icons. This WEF, World Economic Forum, this is the forum of the capitalist, if you like. So education has always been tied with capitalism in modern times, particularly because it focuses on growth, progress, and consumption. The discourse largely shapes, these constructs. And I was having conversations with one of the colleagues who works in Germany right now, and what we said that these discourses actually have been challenged in Europe, unfortunately. Unfortunately, the simplistic version of this growth, progress, and consumption is taking place in Asia and South Asia in particular. We need more growth, we need more progress, more consumption, without looking into the negative side, the damaging aspects of this one. So more shareholders, producers of the waste. So this is one version of capitalism, and education just supports this. Stakeholders who work for prosperity rather than profit. So this is the recent concept. There is a book called Stakeholder Capitalism, published by the then president of the World Economic Forum. There is a pretty good hope around this idea of stakeholder capitalism rather than shareholder capitalism. So, and then if we look at the history of educational reproduction, then first of all the question comes to us is whose interest is being served by this particular curriculum, and whose knowledge counts, and who is going to use it, who is going to benefit it. So Jürgen Habermas puts this question squarely on us that educational process are, unquestioningly reproduced across the globe. And now it's our turn to question ourselves about our curricula, our pedagogy, and our knowledge systems. One sort of idea to look at, I'm sort of speaking very, this synthesis of several papers and ideas that we have written in the last few years. So one is when we look at the university curricula, the first question is, who is going to benefit it? And second question is, where is the community that the knowledge is connected? Okay? So are communities invited? Do they participate? Are they part of the process? Because this question is not just the tagline. These questions are very profound, very important. Because what we think, what is global right now is simply a local of one place and making it available for all, or imposing for all. So community in itself should have the right to knowledge system and should have the right to its one process of improving its knowledge system. I think back in since 1960s, these two reasons compete in education. So, two contrasting reasons. One is closed vision, center will design the course, top-down model, no autonomy for teachers, professors, no opportunity for the students, test-taking, affiliation, also rote memorization, creativity almost nil. This is British Indian model. So that we have copied in Nepal, and we have several remnants of this one. And second open vision, responsive curriculum. Curriculum is not fixed, rather it is dynamic, dialogic text. Dynamism is part of the students and teachers. Teacher has autonomy, students create something, openness and synergy. Why I am bringing this one? Because we need to set the reminder, because our higher education started in Nepal with this closed vision, with Trichandra College being monitored by Kolkata, Patna, whichever university. And if you look at various colleges, big colleges in India, they were all were sort of controlled or governed by one central university. This model is still desired, Although we pluralize higher education, we say we pluralize, but still the model is on. Okay? So, discipline, and the next is higher education. Lastly, is governed by the notion of disciplinary eurocentrism. So, this means that if you choose a particular discipline, and that becomes the ultimate reality, and that becomes the masking of our knowing and becoming. If we look at higher education, I think I put it this from Noam Chomsky, largely contemporary. So this is these two schools. This doesn't mean that contemporary is contemporary in our case. Probably we are still following old school model. So if you look at the goal of higher education, a fundamental question we never asked and we avoided, we have been avoiding to ask is why higher education or why education in particular? This question has not been discussed well. So we need this course. We need this course because it's some university has offered this. That's why we need it. No, that's the fundamental wrong that we are doing. So contemporary. So if you look at higher education, so old school largely producing the model, knowledge of production, docile workers, preparation for abstract and distant one future, and status quo job placement based on favoritism. This is part of South Asian model. Knowledge production, creation, developing individuals as autonomous citizens prepare for the present actually. The present, the moment, this moment is very, very important. Even if we think about future, Anna Stetson says that future is not something absent of present. It's connected. Okay, it's a continuation of past, present, and future. So this is largely the prosperity. This is the domain of prosperity for all. Why don't we look at again? If we look for prosperity, then what these business people say is interesting. I think educators should learn from them. So World Economic Forum in 2016 says that ability, these are prosperity attributes, not money, but ability to identify challenges, locate resources, employ thinking skills, exercise autonomy, and develop ethical sensibilities. I think these are very important sort of, I like this one. If we embrace these in our educational processes, I think it will be great. It will be very helpful. So these are not attributes for select few. This is attribute for the whole population. That's what I think. When we, how many of you have IT background here? Computer, IT? Can you raise your hand? Okay. So I'm speaking here using this language. So education 1.0, it doesn't have the response mechanism. It is simply a delivery mechanism, input mechanism. If we develop it higher education 2.0, then there is a feedback loop. So normally our education system has been modeled around education 1.0, where students and other stakeholders have little to say about our education. And again, who said this? The World Economic Forum, Jackman, and Bill Gates. They are saying it. Okay? Sorry. Okay, part 2. Then what should we do in pedagogy then? So these are bits and pieces of these different reasons. And they demand us to become, embrace at least 2.0, embrace at least open vision, where community is connected. So after this rambling, I'm going to briefly talk about Nepalese education system, context. Our education model, if you look at the root cause since the establishment of Darbar High School and since the establishment of Prison College, then our educational process are highly disengaged because of if you look at the results, around 70% of students fail. This is every year across the disciplines. Of course, somewhere it is high, somewhere it is low. And the next is one size fits all, as I said, the British Indian model, the big university at the center, big system is at the center, and there are this idea of home colony system. So home has something big, and colony has something, secondary kind of thing, a lesser kind of thing. And challenges posed by quick fix approach to reform. I would use the word comfort oriental regency, thanks to Frank Fanon, but Many people didn't like that idea. That's why I use quick fix. Because that's the tradition in Nepal in the last few years. And this gives right. We can't see that loss. But what we see, business as usual. Attitude, victim blaming, and higher number of failure, insufficiency of returns. So what do we do then? Of course, there are options. Radical restructuration of curriculum. So we can challenge we bring pedagogical activism. We also can challenge this question or conduct discourses on key assumptions, economic rationalism, well-being, active citizenship, inclusion, empowerment, and this could be connected with transformative higher education. So the discourse of transformative higher education, then we need to look into our pedagogical models. Are we taking up this continuing caring pedagogy, going towards collaborative, or are we preparing questioning students to question what we will be doing? Okay? So we are looking more not in, of course, informing pedagogy may be needed. So metaphors of infodex, this represents metaphor of infodex, where teaching subjects rather than teaching humans prevails, and technical dimension of educational processes, where information is at the key. Likewise, reforming is more like quick fix, teaching, moving towards facilitation, moving towards student center, promoting student participation. This is called practical. Practical dimension of education or pedagogy. So transforming pedagogy is more utopic, aiming at critically examining deeply seated assumptions upon which pedagogies are developed. Whose interests are being well served by existing pedagogy, whose interests are not well served. So learners, as questioners, inventors, and creative problem solvers. So this would be called critical dimension of education. So if you look at higher education, so where we are leading our students, is just conceptual, factual knowing, or it is more of critical reflective knowing, more of convictional knowing, or it is even further than imaginary, visionary, so more habits and actions related to. So if we look at change learning model, thanks to many authors, including here in Iran and Kolb and Freire. So if we look at knowledge building, then it starts with convictions and assumptions. We examine our convictions, and then and assumptions and action, and then we go in the action, in the community, critical reflection, and this way knowledge building takes place. Very simple. So this can also be connected with different forms of knowing. Is it conceptually oriented, or is it reflectively oriented, or is it critically approached, or is it about visionary knowledge building? All are connected. You can see in the Venn diagram as well. So we also wrote this one back in 2019. So the first question we might ask, what am I learning? How am I learning? The second question. So the first question is so commonplace, everyone asks. The second question, asked by probably many, not by all. The third question asked by very few. And fourth question, who am I becoming in this process, is asked by almost none. So this becoming dimension becomes absent in higher education, and particularly in early higher education, because we go just there for certification. Then what should we be doing for this, for these models? So how can we address this problem? So I have some, ideas. I'm going to share some ideas about curriculum vision. So we need curriculum, we need philosophy, we need pedagogical models, and then we also need curriculum visions as well. What I mean by curriculum is not simply the written text. Curriculum is not simply the written text. Curriculum conversation, and in curriculum conversation and culture, William Dole talks about this. Curriculum is commonplace, it's pervasive, it's everywhere. We need to see that one. Simply we are reducing curriculum into a written document. So many of us say that, our written curriculum is perfect. But its delivery is problematic. No, the entire curriculum process is problematic. Not just written document, maybe 10%, but 90% is its implementation.